Hey, football fans. So I've been reading this book. It's called Fear is a Choice. It's by James Conner. He's a professional football player for the Arizona Cardinals. He was in the Pro Bowl past year. He also played with the Pittsburgh Steelers for several years and played for the Pitt Panthers. He also grew up in Erie, Pennsylvania. He played for Erie McDowell High School. So during James's life in college, um, he experienced, he was diagnosed with lymphoma. And he talks about that in this book that he wrote called Fear is a Choice. And I'm going to read you his words about when he was diagnosed with lymphoma. At first, it seemed like all was going according to plan, but soon there was a problem. A sneaking whisper in the back of my head I tried to ignore, telling me something was wrong. I struggled to recover from runs that used to be no problem. When I tried to lift weights, I experienced an intense pressure in my head, like it was being squeezed in a vice. And then there were the night sweats. I would fight all night to fall asleep, only to wake up in the morning after less than an hour of rest, my bed soaked in sweat. None of this made any sense. I was an athlete. I ate right. I was physically healthy, but my body seemed to be failing me anyway. My symptoms stumped specialist after specialist until finally, out of sheer desperation, I made an appointment with an ear, nose, and throat doctor, thinking I might have a sinus infection that was causing my head pain. Everything looked clear during the appointment. No ear infection, no sinus issues, nothing to indicate that anything was wrong. So much for that theory. But before I left her office, she told me she was going to send me for a chest x-ray, just in case. The answer to the question, just in case what? Never even crossed my mind. I just went to the appointment and then headed home to try to squeeze in another workout before bed. The doctor's office called me a few hours later and told me I needed to see my regular physician, Dr. Robert Ferris, the next day for further tests. First thing in the morning, I showed up at the clinic. The University of Pittsburgh Medical Center is huge, with several different massive buildings scattered around campus and downtown. It was strange to be walking into an enormous 12-story building that was surprisingly quiet and still before it filled up with people for the day. I made my way to Dr. Ferris's office and checked in. They took me back right away. No one should ever get that many needle pricks or have that much blood drawn before their morning coffee. As the lab printer spit out the labels for all the different vials, I was amazed at how long the paper was. I could have snapped it around my neck and used it as a scarf. But all I really cared about was feeling better, so I didn't think much about it. I was just ready to have a diagnosis so I could get a treatment plan and recovery schedule and get back to playing as quickly as possible. When I was done at the lab, Dr. Ferris sat me down and explains that the x-rays had shown some suspicious masses in my chest. He was concerned it might be lymphoma. I had never even heard of lymphoma, so his words hardly fazed me. I mean, I knew it couldn't be great news, but I didn't automatically realize that it was a type of cancer. Maybe that was a good thing because it kept me from freaking out right away. Since most of the pain seemed to be in my face and head, I still thought I had some kind of a bad cold. If we could just knock that out of my system, I'd be fine. But when Dr. Ferris told me he wanted to do a biopsy, something in my gut kept nudging me. I have to tell mom. She was worried enough about my knee. I didn't see the point in adding to her stress if it turned out that my head pain was really just something dumb like a sinus infection. But I couldn't quiet that nagging voice, so I reluctantly dialed the phone and told her everything. Unlike my mom, instantly realized the implications of lymphoma. Unlike me, my mom instantly realized the implications of lymphoma. Mom did a great job of keeping her fears under wraps, but I could still detect concern in her voice when she told me she was going to drive down that night and accompany me to the biopsy the next day. I'm glad she came. Once I started doing a little research on lymphoma, I realized that I was potentially facing something way bigger than anything I could have ever prepared for. Unlike when I got the torn MCL diagnosis, I didn't cry. I wasn't sad. I was angry and in shock. After everything I had already gone through, God was going to pile cancer on top of it too? How was that consistent with the loving father I had always believed cared about me and my life? It wasn't fair to my mom, and it wasn't fair to my family. It wasn't fair to my team, and it wasn't fair to me. What about my plans and dreams? I lost what was supposed to be my best season, and now I was faced with the possibility that I might even lose my life. If this really did turn out to be cancer, couldn't God have let me at least keep football before dropping something like this on my lap? As I turned this idea over in my head, I remembered something one of the doctors had told me. If I had continued playing in my distressed physical condition with my white blood cells counts as elevated as they were and a tumor compressing the veins near my heart, there was a very good chance that I could have gone into cardiac arrest on the field. That could have been it for me. If I had had a heart attack in the middle of a game, would have had no idea what had caused it, possibly until it was too late to undergo any kind of treatment. So I'm going to move ahead a little bit. So it says this. Finally, on a cold morning the week of December, we got a call that the results were in. Mom and I drove to the hospital. We didn't take a whole lot. What was there to say at that point? A few minutes after we arrived, I was called back to the exam room. My mom and my athletic trainer on my heels. The paper on the vinyl table crinkled as I sat on it. But otherwise, the room was so quiet that I swore others could hear my nervous heartbeat. Even though I tried to keep my concerns to myself to save my mom the worry, I felt so much calmer just knowing she was next to me at that moment. The door opened, and Dr. Ferris squeezed in with a very serious look on his face. He pulled my file up on the computer. As he started talking about what the various tests showed, his voice faded into the background while my eyes slid to one line of text at the bottom of the screen. Symptoms compatible with lymphoma. There it was. Any hope for a different diagnosis evaporated. I could only vaguely hear the sound of Dr. Ferris's voice explaining the procedure the pathologist had used in examining the biopsy results. Unable to contain any anxiety any longer, I cut Dr. Ferris's off mid-sentence. The last line says, Dr. Ferris gently confirmed that I'd read as my mom burst into tears. It was filled with an incredible feeling of defiance. I didn't care about the odds. It didn't matter to me if the survival rate was 85% or 5%. I was going to beat this thing. I couldn't imagine that God would bring me this far just to let me go now. If I was going to trust the plan, really trust it beyond all reason or logic, I couldn't even entertain the option that there was any other outcome for me than complete recovery. I would be lying if I told you that I was totally at peace with the news. I wasn't. I was angry all over again at how unfair everything seemed. I was frustrated that I was further than ever from my dream of getting back on the field. A lot of the calm I had felt previously evaporated, even though I was glad that my injury had led to my diagnosis. I knew there was a bigger plan at work, but I couldn't feel grateful for the fight I had been handed. I still had no idea how great the plan really was. So this was the time that James Conner was diagnosed and told that after a biopsy told by the doctor that he had lymphoma and that he would have to start undergoing treatments and things like that. So just wanted to share this with you. This is in his book, Fear is a Choice. Good book. You should pick it up. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and send me a message. If you know somebody who's, battling cancer or, some type of illness, or if you would generally just want to talk about James Conner and his football career, feel free to do that. And thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.